You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. Yes. All right, and welcome to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. I am your host, Mr. Mike Riley. I am usually joined by my lovely co-hosts, Cam Robson and Charlie Sandy, but they are not here tonight. They have to study for some big tests, and God bless them. We wish them the best as they are doing good in school, and they're killing it. They're killing it in school. So God bless you, Charlie. God bless you, Cam. I know you are out there and you are listening. And Brooke is usually with me tonight too, but unfortunately she's a little sick tonight. She's under the weather. Everybody's catching a bug here and there out here in LA. So I am solo. You can't hear me tonight. I'm all by myself, but that's okay because I'm joined by you. So God bless all y'all for tuning in. Today is Thursday, January 26, 2017, of course. And it is my first week back. I took a week off last week because I was in Washington, D.C. for the Trump inauguration and for the Women's March. And I have made it back in one piece. So I'm going to give myself a round of applause for that because things got a little crazy out there, and it was pretty fun, though. I had a really good time. I was joined by my girl, Carrie Maxim, who is an incredible filmmaker, and we were out there filming The Uninformed States of America, which is the documentary series that you can check out. It's going to be putting together pretty soon. We had a really awesome time. I can't even tell you how surreal it was. If anybody was out there and you saw me out there and I passed you a card or told you about my podcast or told you about my web series and you shook my hand and said, "What's up?" Both Trump supporters and Trump protesters alike, I want to say hello and thank you for listening. And thank all of my new listeners for listening who are tuning in on iTunes and Spreaker and who are also tuning in on Google Play. And we are now on iHeartRadio as well. So that is a big thing. If you know anybody who likes listening to iHeartRadio, please tell them to tune into the Mike Riley Now podcast. You can always follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that cool stuff at Mike Riley Now, MikeRileyNow.com, YoungAngelsOfAmerica.org. And that's enough with the plugs. All right, let's get right into it. So, like I said, last week I was out at the inauguration. I went to D.C. I got to fly out there, and we were filming the Uninformed States of America. And we were out there because one of the pilot episode that we're doing for this show has to do with civil disobedience versus actual civic participation, right? Now, the last time we were all together, Donald Trump hadn't been president yet. So I was there to watch him get sworn in as the 45th president of the United States. And we also got to go to the Women's March out there, too, in D.C. We went there, and I can tell you firsthand, it was probably the most surreal experience I think I've ever had before in my life. The Women's March. Just to kind of give you a little backstory on it real quick, I'll share a little story with you. The day before the inauguration, we were in D.C. and we were kind of walking around, and we were amongst so many Trump supporters. We were at the inaugural, concert, pre-concert with Three Doors Down, and I think it was Toby Keith, and the Partridge Family, who should have been. No, I'm just joking. But it was cool. But there were tons of Trump supporters there, and I am not a Trump supporter. I don't know if you can tell. And when we were out there, and we were, I was kind of undercover. I wasn't sporting my Go Hillary gear or none of that shit. But we were out there, and man, it felt weird. It felt a little off. I was one of the only 7 black people that were out there, and there were a few brothers out there who were rocking their "Make America Great Again" hats, and that was kind of weird. The next day, during the inauguration, we were out there on the mall, and I'm an eyewitness to the amount of people that were not there. The entire mall was not filled up during his speech and during his inauguration. There were a lot of people who could not get in due to security. So I don't know what that was about. So Trump wasn't telling a complete lie, but it definitely wasn't as full as he was trying to make it seem. I mean, we were able to run around on the streets out there on the mall the day of the inauguration, and it was about half Trump supporters, half protesters. And in the early part of the day, a lot of the protesters were getting arrested. There were a few things that happened where there was a limousine caught on fire and things like that. And people kind of took it out of proportion. You hear a lot of people on the right, tons of people on the right who are just like these rioters, these looters, and all this other stuff. You know, I'm from LA, and where I'm from, we kind of say, you call that a riot? You know, that's not a riot. That was a few knuckleheads who acted up, who broke some windows to some places who I'm sure have some great insurance. I'm not advocating that. I think it's wrong. I don't think it's okay to, you know, light things on fire and blow things up and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think when people sit there and call it riots and looting, I think that's just taking it too far. But at the same time, there were some rowdy people out there who shouldn't have been doing that. A lot of people got arrested that shouldn't have been arrested that day. One of my friends was there to witness that. A lot of his friends got taken to jail. A lot of journalists got taken to jail who were just innocent bystanders. A kid got pepper sprayed by the police. I mean, this stuff is all online. You can go to YouTube and check it out. But the next day, because we got to the Women's March a little late, or the inauguration a little late, so me and Carrie, who was out there filming with me, we were like, okay, we're gonna get up early as hell for the Women's March, and we're gonna, you know, go make sure we get down to the mall, because we had a meeting with the Congresswoman Spear from California a little earlier that day, and so we made sure we got on the metro at about 7:30. We head down to the metro station, and man, it was packed full of people going to that Women's March. I mean, they all had their little pink hats on, you know. What are they called? The pussycat hats, the pussycat caps, or whatever they're called. I know my mother probably doesn't like me saying that word, pussycat. But they were all there, and it was full. It was surreal. The streets were packed. You couldn't move. And that day, there weren't any Trump supporters around at all. There were a few, kind of one or two here and there, kind of standing on the side, but you couldn't move around. And the camaraderie and the good vibes and the good energy that were around that day were incredible. I have to say, that was a very surreal experience. I've never seen that many people in one place at one time before in my life. So, but I am only in my 30s, 31 to be exact. So I still have a long life to live. Hopefully. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to go any day now. But to kind of get back to the main point, the reason why we were out there, and this is something we were trying to capture on all, 3 or 4 days we spent out there, was what's going on? All the protesting, all of the, and we talked about this on this show before, how do we see civil disobedience actually equate to actual civic participation? There were a lot of people out there who were marching. I mean, especially the day of the Women's March. There were people out there who were really riled up and really mad. Not necessarily mad. Mad's the wrong word. Take that back. Not necessarily. Well, mad. Yeah, mad is, I guess, mad. There are a lot of people who out there who were mad. But a lot of, I guess the majority of the people who were there for the Women's March, and I hear a lot of people, especially on the right, and I hate, I don't like to point fingers, because I hear the right always accusing the left of a bunch of shit that we never do. But a lot of people are asking, well, what was the point of the protest? Women have their rights. Women have the right to vote and blah, blah, blah. I didn't hear anybody out there. Trump's not taking away women's rights. He said some chauvinistic things, but, but what's the real reason why you were out there protesting? A lot of what was the point of protesting? And for those of you who are confused on that, I can clear it up for you. There's a lot of reasons to be out there protesting. Trump has started his presidency out in a completely bizarre way. Not to mention the way he was campaigning with the lies and the bully bravado and the chauvinistic things as well. I don't think it was necessarily so much about women's rights. A lot of it had to do with that. A lot of it had to do with the fact that a lot of women will not accept a chauvinistic person as being their president, which I completely understand. But a lot of it also, too, had to do with just the kind of person Trump is and the things he represents and what he started out doing. And that was a big part of that of that march, for those of you who just don't get it. And for those of you who are like, well, women still have their rights, they're over here protesting about women's rights. Rights can be taken away. They have been before, and they can be again. We're going to roll back the clock on a lot of things come Supreme Court Justice nominee time. We'll see what happens. But I was out there asking people, do you feel like all of this civil disobedience, a lot of the protesting, in other words, do you feel that this actually transcends into actual results? I was talking to a friend earlier who told me they both have good reason, but they both serve the same purpose, but have a different outcome. In one sense, you have the biggest movement on the in the history of the world. It's been said, which is true, I believe, because all 7 continents were protesting. Shit, they were probably marching on Mars or in a space station somewhere. I'm sure of it, but they were marching in Antarctica. I mean, who's ever heard of that? I didn't even know that there ain't nothing down there but a bunch of penguins and science research or scientific researchers, and they were marching against Trump too. They did it in Africa. They did it in Asia. They did it in the Middle East. They did it in Europe. They did it in Australia. I mean, it was worldwide, baby. Nothing like that has ever happened before. Damn. Is that going to transcend into results, though? Is that going to make Trump change his mind? How many of those people out there do you think actually voted for Hillary Clinton? That was one of the big questions we were, really, really, really focusing on out there. And the response that we were getting from people was pretty much the same. And we were asking both Trump supporters and Trump protesters, what's it going to really take to make this change actually happen that you want to see? The reason I kind of bring that up is because I think in my generation, for a lot of millennials and people who are, in that kind of age category, a lot of the younger voters and younger Americans, when they hear the word, you need to get involved, you need to participate. And I've said this before, for a lot of them, and this is just literally as brutal as it gets, that means civil disobedience. That means protesting. That means going out, making the very amazing and creative signs that I saw. And I'm going to post some blog posts later on MikeRallyNow.com. I haven't had a chance to yet. I've had a hell of a week since I've been back. Lord knows I haven't had a chance to sit down. So I try to keep up on the social media tip and everything like that, but I get my ass kicked, y'all. So please pray for me. But at the same time, I saw some great signs. I saw a lot of good reasons to being out there and being in marching. I heard a lot of great speakers. And I do mean that on both sides, by the way. I saw a lot of people on Trump's side who were pretty cool, and I'm not giving Trump any leeway. I am all for the resistance. But at the same time, a lot of his supporters, as much as I think as illogical as some of them can be sometimes. And if you think I'm full of shit on that, please write all your hate mail to MikeRallyNow@gmail.com. I would love to read it. And I'll read it on the air. And next week, I swear to God, we'll be broadcasting live. So you'll be able to call into the show and we'll be able to talk on the air. And I would love to talk to a lot of my conservative friends if you're out there. But at the same time, on both sides, they were giving me the same kind of answers. A lot of the Trump supporters were saying the same thing. We see a lot of these people out here are marching or pissed off, but how many of them are actually running for office? How many of them are actually voting for progressives? Now, in the midst of everything that's been going on, I think we are starting to see that. Especially since our political arena is becoming so entertaining now. And yes, Hillary Clinton won by 3 million more votes than Donald Trump did. And yes, Donald Trump is launching this investigation. I have to laugh at this. Because he thinks that because off of some Facebook story he saw, he really has this belief in his head that 3 million illegal votes were casted somewhere in the world, which he has no evidence for. And it's so shit. It's so funny. It's laughable. And at the same time, it's a little scary. And I don't mean scary in the sense where it's like, damn, we all should be frozen in our tracks and be scared. I mean scary as in like, I can't believe this type of shit is going on. You're going to launch a major investigation and spend money to research voter fraud? Well, anyway, like I said, I think that the meaning behind the protests was strong, but participation needs to happen on a whole nother level.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.
All right, perfect, and welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Mike Riley. So yes, like I was talking about in our last segment, we do need to really kind of look into that and see really what the difference can be in actually getting involved in the process. Because in 2010, as many of you know, and I've brought this up on this show before, that's what the Tea Party did. The Tea Party said, you know what, we're going to take our government back. And they didn't take it back by just dressing up in their colonial garb and going out there and protesting, but they actually did it by running for office, local office, by the way. I'm not talking about doing the Jill Stein thing where you pop up every 4 years and you decide you're going to run for president. Not that type of shit. I'm talking about running for city council, running for your Congress, running for mayor, running for public office if you are a progressive, getting involved in your local Democratic Party. Out here in LA, we have the LA County Young Democrats. We have Drinking Liberally. Please get involved. I'm sure there's one in your local part of town too. And join your local Democratic Party. Make a difference. We need leadership. We need somebody on the left who's ready to go at it with these guys. Because I don't think we got it. I mean, everybody's talking about Keith Ellison. I love Keith Ellison. He's a great guy. But in my personal opinion, he ain't got it to go against somebody like Trump. Trump is a tough motherfucker. He is. He owns his shit. All right, let's get into our news of the week. I really do want to start this back up again because I have a lot of people who listen to this show, and they tell me, Mike, I kind of depend on you for some kind of news. I feel kind of weird because that's what Bill Maher kind of does a little bit, and it's a little, you know. But hey, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you want to come to a place to get good progressive media, talk to Mike Riley Now. That's a good place to start. You know, listen to Tom Hartman. Listen to Stephanie Miller. There's Randy Rhodes. There is Democratic Underground. There's Alternet. There's Free Speech TV. We really, because we're not going to get good progressive media watching CNN and MSNBC, who's just hijacked. You know, I think her name is Greta. I forget her name. But she was on Fox News. I forget everybody's damn name, so that's one of my flaws. If you ever meet me and I forget your name, please just remind me what it is. Say it 3 times and I'll remember it. And they also hijacked Megyn Kelly. And I get it. They want a mixture of different opinions, and that's what the news is supposed to do. It's supposed to give you one side and then give you the other side. So I'm cool with NBC for that. But at the same time, you're still being fed the junk food. You know, come and get the real facts from the real people. All right, my first news story, I'm going to try to go quick here because we only have so much time, is support is growing for the California secession movement since Trump has been sworn in. This is according to the PBS NewsHour, and this is where I got this from. Give me 1 second here. Let me make sure I can load this story. You know how the internet machines work sometimes. But, okay, so basically this Cal exit movement is starting to grow in the in the state of California, where a staggering, I think it's like 32% of Californians actually are in favor of secession because they don't want to deal with a Trump presidency. And this is also, there's actually this site called yescalifornia.org where they say that California can sustain itself by itself. It can be its own country. And there are secession movements like this that happened during the Obama days. Remember, Texas tried this whole thing too. I think Alaska went through this. That's what Sarah Palin got in trouble for. But if you go on yescalifornia.org, you'll see their list of the reasons why California should secede and become its own liberal state based upon the politics, based upon immigration, based upon natural resources, the environment, education. Yes, California is a very liberal place, I will say, even though we did vote against the death penalty for some reason, against banning the death penalty. I don't get that. But for whatever other reason, we're pretty liberal for the most part. God bless Orange County, who went blue for the first time this year, or last year in the last election. And but this Cal exit thing is just ridiculous. We're not seceding from the Union. We don't have any recourse. We need to stick together. This is why this is what the South did, after Abraham Lincoln won. This is the kind of stuff that they expect the liberals to do. And plus we ain't got no water out here anyway. I know it rained really hard over the weekend, but it rained that one time. You should see how green it is in places where they don't grow grass anymore because it rains so hard. All the weeds are coming up. That's just the way I kind of look at it. Log on to California, on the yescalifornia.org and check it out. But yeah, this Cal exit thing is starting to get serious with a lot of people. Like, a lot of people are in this whole thing about a California seceding from the Union, saying that we can, we do have the 6th largest economy. We have the largest, we have 40 million people, 42 million, give or take, within the state population. Most people get their fruits and vegetables. Most of the country gets their fruits and vegetables from us. We have the tech coast and the Hollywood and everything else like that goes along with it. But our own country, we probably have to be like the Vatican and get ourselves a pope. All right, the next story. Sales of George Orwell's 1984 surge after Kellyanne Conway's alternative facts kind of thing. Give me 1 second here. Let me go ahead and load this story up. But as many of you probably saw, Kellyanne Conway was doing an interview. I want to say it was with Chuck Todd, or I think that's who it was with. And it was on CNN. And, Chuck asked her about, my man, I think his name is Spicer, who gave Trump's press secretary, who kind of boasted on the idea that, well, there were more people at the inauguration than there were at Barack Obama's inauguration, or something along those lines, and the media's inflating numbers and they're just out to get us, blah, 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 blah. And, Chuck Todd called him out and said, well, that's not true. And Kellyanne Conway said something along the lines of, well, he just gave an alternative fact. Now, I know most of y'all saw that. What the hell is an alternative fact? Sounds like a lie to me. I mean, and do me a favor and let's talk about this. Like, log on to Facebook, MikeRileyNow.com. I'm going to put up a post and say, what the hell is an alternative fact? And if, I need to get more Facebook followers, by the way. So if you want to suggest somebody, please, go ahead and do that. But at the same time, I really want to know what an alternative fact really is, because to me, that's a lie. But anyway, back to the story, and this is according to TheGuardian.com, and I'll post these up on MikeRileyNow.com. But sales of George Orwell's dystopian drama 1984 have soared after Kellyanne Conway, advisor to the TV reality turned president Donald Trump, used the phrase alternative facts in an interview. As of Tuesday, the book was the 6th best-selling book on Amazon. For those of you who don't know about George Orwell's 1984, it's basically a dystopian book that talks about a future in which Big Brother, this is where the term Big Brother is watching you is coming from, and where the government is completely just like, it's one of these fascist governments. Basically had Hitler and the communists basically won the World War II is pretty much the premise. And we had to read this when we were kids. You ever heard the term Orwellian? That's where the George Orwellian or Orwell kind of thing kind of comes from. And it it's one of these things that a lot of people kind of see synonymous as, the V for Vendetta kind of world. And they say that's the path we're heading down. The article goes on to read, comparisons were made with the term newspeak used in the 1949 novel, which was used to signal a fictional language that aims at eliminating personal thought and also double think. In the book, Orwell writes that it means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. That sounds like alternative facts to me. I don't know about y'all, and I don't know about all my Trump supporters out there. I mean, I really got to talk to y'all. I got to talk to y'all. Do you really give in to this shit? I mean, is this something you're really like, how do you accept this? But I guess on the flip side, they'll say, Barack Obama lied or something. They'll talk about, if you like your doctor, you can keep it. Or they'll bring up something, mundane like that. And I know it's not mundane to them, but whatever. And I just got a headline on my phone right now that said Trump and Putin are to speak on the phone Saturday in their first conversation since Trump took office, an administration official tells CNN. that is we'll see what happens there. I'm not going to sit here and try to say Trump and Putin are love buddies or anything. I'm not going to get into that crowd, and I'm not going to sit there and get into the whole Russian bullshit. But I will say this: I wonder what that conversation is going to be like. They're probably going to get on the phone and be like, "Hey, anyway, all right, okay." The last story is a human-pig hybrid created in the lab. And here are the facts. And this is according to National Geographic, that scientists hope that, I'm going to say this wrong, the chimera embryos represent key steps towards life-saving lab organs. Oh, I didn't get a chance to get into this full story, but basically they're merging pigs and human embryos together in order to create organs ready for ready-made people who want organs, who are organ donors. That's pretty interesting in science. Anyway, I'll post all these up on MikeRileyNow.com. Make sure you check them out, and please provide your feedback. All right, y'all, we'll be right back. It's the Mike Riley Now podcast.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.
Oh, yeah. And welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. I am your host, Mike Riley, of course. If you have been riding with me this long, my thing is we love you for that. That was where the music cut out kind of abruptly. It normally doesn't do that. But anyway, we really want to thank you for riding with us this long. And I want to thank like I said, anybody who has hit that subscribe button, and anybody who's been tuning in on MikeRileyNow.com, on Spreaker. Next week, I am going to do a live show. It will be Facebook Live. It will be on Spreaker. I'm going to be launching my app sometime in the early spring, probably around March. We're just developing it and kind of getting all the kinks worked out and dealing with the finances and whatnot. And you can call into the show. As of right now, I don't have a call screener. That will be coming in the near future. So when you call into the show, remember this is a podcast, so you can curse and say whatever you want, and that's all good. We're not all, I don't have to have a delay so I can bleep you out, but just be respectful and, understand that if we're going to talk, we'll have a discussion. And I am not afraid to get out of line with people, or not get out of line with people. I'm not afraid to, that was the wrong phrase. I'm not afraid to get you off the line if things get turned into into kind of a pissing match. We don't need that. We're here to have a discussion. We're here to figure out a way we can come together as a nation, as a society, as a species, as a world, and help people understand that government is a natural part of the process, and we all need to take care of each other. All right, so let's get into the third segment, which is our economic segment. But before I kind of dip deep into economics, I'm going to be talking about a lot of Trump's policies, a lot of the things that he's already signed. It's day number 6 into the Donald Trump presidency. Hasn't even been a week yet. And he signed like more executive orders, I think, than Barack Obama did in his entire 8 years. Just a side note. Remember conservatives were bitching about that? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put that one out there because it's the truth. But I will say that there have been so many laws or executive orders that Donald Trump has been putting into place so far. He's already signed, I think, up to like 13. This kid isn't playing, man. This guy went in and he is trying to keep his promises. Just today, the president of Mexico, Enrique, I'm not going to remember the guy's last name, but he canceled the meeting with Donald Trump today based off the fact that Donald Trump pushed this executive order through saying that we're going to build that wall. And Mexico's going to pay for it. And basically the president of Mexico, Donald Trump, to kiss his, you know what, ass. I can say ass on this show. And, Donald Trump didn't take very lightly to that. So his solution to that problem was we're going to put a 20% tariff on Mexican imports. We're going to get into that in just a second, but I kind of want to go over some of these executive orders so far. So we just talked about the border wall. Also, too, there's deportations in sanctuary cities, right? So he's going to start this hardcore deportation kind of force that he's going to try to put together. By the way, for all of the conservatives who talk shit and scream all this stuff about small government, this ain't small government at all. I think earlier this week he tweeted something about sending the feds into Chicago. That's small government. Anyway, and for those of you who don't know what sanctuary cities really are, I think people have it twisted and they think sanctuary cities are places where illegal immigrants can come and they're protected from everything. No, that's not what a sanctuary city is. A sanctuary city is a place where if you're an illegal immigrant and you're here in the United States, you don't have to be afraid to call 911 if something happens to you. If you get into a car accident, if your house gets robbed, if something happens to you, you can get help without having to worry about being deported. That's what a sanctuary city is. It ain't nothing more than that. It's not a place where they harbor illegal immigrants. But Trump has signed an executive order trying to get rid of that. He's reviewing manufacturing regulations. He's going to begin a 60-day review of regulations for American manufacturers. We'll see what happens when he starts to deregulate shit. Now, remember, I hear people all the time talk about deregulation hurts business, deregulation hurts business, deregulation stifles business. I need somebody to do me a big favor and be specific with me about which deregulations you are talking about. If you're talking about I can't put poison on my food or my fruits and vegetables, or I can't poison water or poison the environment, or my bathrooms have to be up to code, or my building has to be safe enough, or I have to be paying people a fair wage. If it's that versus like I have to just fill out a bunch of paperwork, I would like to know, because I want to know what regulations are hurting business that you think are just unfair. I'm just curious. We're going to build those damn pipelines. Keystone and Dakota's going through. It's happening. Sign that up. Killed the EPA. Killed that to death. ACA, the Affordable Care Act, rolling it back way hard. I mean, we're taking it, he's trying to dismantle it without congressional approval. Trump is not screwing around. But let's talk about what he did with the TPP and NAFTA. Okay. Now, this happens to be one area where I just agree with the man. He has a point when it comes to NAFTA and the TPP. He pulled out of the TPP. And let me break this down to everybody, because I know a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. The TPP is a Trans-Pacific Partnership, and NAFTA is a North American Free Trade Agreement. Okay. The North American Free Trade Agreement was signed into law in the 1990s by Bill Clinton. Now, this is one thing people give Bill Clinton a lot of shit for. They give him a lot of shit for it. Just for the record, I always tell people I have a thing where, for me, it's not Republicans, it's the Republican Party. I have no problem with Republicans. I got a big problem with the Republican Party. Their morals, the things that they campaign on, I just don't agree with it. On the flip side, I ain't got no beef with the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party, the platform of the party, is something I'm down with. But certain Democrats, I can't stand. I have no problem with Bill Clinton. I have no quarrels with him. But that was one thing he did that I think was wrong. And so did every other Democrat at the time. Republicans got behind Bill Clinton to sign NAFTA into law. Now, why is NAFTA a bad thing? Right? The North American Free Trade Agreement, basically, let me go ahead and break this down to you just a little bit further. There's an article, and I'm going to post it up on MikeRileyNow.com, but there's an article that was published by, I think it was the Harvard Business Review, and it was written by I.M. Destler, and it was published on April 28th, 26, and they break down America's uneasy history with free trade, and it talks about the history of it. Now, you got to remember, free trade was something that came around and started during the 80s. Now, what's free trade? Now, trade is something that goes all the way back to the beginning of time when it comes to human beings, right? We've always traded things with each other. That was our means of commerce at one point. I mean, now, we lived by the barter system before there was currency. Okay. And trading things when the continents started to move, when trade started to go across oceans, essentially when the New World started to open up, trade became a big part of the economy. Back in the day, the number one import and export were Africans. They were trading black bodies up and around that coast for years, and it was making big money. And trade's big money. So what a lot of the founding fathers did, I want to say it was, might have been Alexander Hamilton or somebody like that, who initiated this idea of tariffs. Now, tariffs are kind of import taxes, right? They set up tariffs in a sense to tax on imports, so it keeps all the natural resources and it keeps businesses here in the United States. There's also called a VAT tax that does the same thing, okay? Now, when your tariffs are high, in other words, when you have a high tariff, it's going to cost people a lot of money to import things in the United States. So essentially, businesses in the United States aren't going to set up shop overseas. They might as well keep their business right here in the United States. Things get just made here, bought here, and sold here. We have all the natural resources to pretty much do it, so why not do it? We can build factories, we can build cars. We did that at one point. That's what made us a superpower in the world. But somewhere along the lines, in the 1980s, during the Reagan days, and after the Powell memo was written, and you can Google search all this stuff. Google search the Powell memo if you have a chance. After around this time, that's when we started to drop the tariff tax, and things started to get made out of the country. Why? Because it's cheaper to make things outside of the country. You don't have to pay no minimum wage. You don't have to deal with workman's comps. You don't have to deal with workers' unions. It just makes more sense. If somebody came up to you and you were a business owner, if you were somebody who makes shoes or something like that, and they walked up to you and they said, hey, man, you're making about, what, $4 million a year? How would you like to make $40 million a year? All you got to do is cut your labor cost. Duh. I'm living good, but I can live a lot better. I got a Benz, but I want a Bentley. I got a yacht, but I want a bigger yacht. I got a helicopter, but I want a plane. That's what it kind of turns into. Anyway, I'm going to read you a piece of this article. We're going to start with free trade's evolution. As a result, the president's negotiating authority was initially limited to bilateral agreements with individual foreign nations. But after World War II, amid a desire to integrate and rebuild the post-war economy, the U.S. led the creation of the Multilateral General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade, known as GATT. Under its auspices, the major world trading nations concluded a series of negotiating rounds to further lower trade barriers. The most prominent of these were the Kennedy Round between 1963 and 67, the Tokyo Round between 73 and 79, and the Uruguay Round between 86 and 94. As a result of these negotiations, U.S. tariff rates on imports subject to tariffs fell from the smooth Hawley average of 60% in 1930 to 5.7% in 1980. Who was president at that time? Non-tariff barriers, such as quantitative limits on imports and restrictive regulations, were also reduced. Cumulatively, these trade agreements brought about the revolution in U.S. trade policy, opening both the American and foreign markets to an unprecedented degree. This is something that Donald Trump had campaigned hard against these disastrous trade deals. And he was right. Now, he's going about it kind of wrong. But he kind of makes a point. Ross Perot ran for president in 1992 against Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush. Now, these two, George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, were freaking stars. Everybody knows these guys were the big fish in the small pond, right? But along came this guy named Ross Perot. Ross Perot's this billionaire. He's this kind of libertarian kind of guy, but he hustled on the trade deals. His campaign commercials, he used to stand in front of car factories that were shut down in places like Detroit and in Indianapolis. He used to sit there and say, look at these places. We used to build cars out here. This used to be us. What happened? They're screwing us over. That man got 22% of the popular vote for a third-party candidate. That ain't happened since. Why? Because he hustled on those trade deals. Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders hustled on those fucking trade deals. That's why they got so far. Because America's wanted their jobs back. Manufacturing should happen here in the United States. Everything American made, bought, and sold. Will it raise the prices of things? Well, that's up to speculation. Is Donald Trump going about doing it the right way? I don't think so. Why? Well, dismantling the TPP and renegotiating NAFTA are good things. Raising the tariffs might even actually be a good thing. We'll see what happens. Maybe he may create a scenario where he keeps manufacturing in the United States. But his Secretary of Labor, his Secretary of Education, the people who are against minimum wage, who are against people having breaks, who are against workers' unions. I mean, how much do you think this is a party that's for the American worker? Instead of actually raising tariffs, I mean, he's only been in office 6 days, but he's already done a lot of. I was talking to a friend last night. He said Donald Trump's been in office 5 days, and he's already the worst president ever. I thought that was pretty funny, but he's only been in office a couple, less than a week. So we'll see what he does as far as raising tariffs and all these other things are concerned, and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so people can have their jobs back. But to what degree? Are we still protecting workers' rights? Because having a workers' rights protected is probably the backbone of sustaining a middle class, because the middle class are the workers. It is the working class. And what's going to happen when he renegotiates NAFTA? He pretty much just slapped the president of Mexico in his face today. And we'll see what happens when a lot of these corporations start kind of losing their money to Donald Trump. Are we going to have a trade war with China? And what does a trade war lead to? Like I said, I know for a lot of people, this is kind of a foreign language, and we'll talk more about it in the future when it comes to trade, because trade, you can read Thomas Paine's books. He talks about how trade is the backbone of an economy. All right, y'all. That is our show for this week. I want to thank every single last one of you for joining me. And God bless every single last one of you. God bless Charlie. God bless Brooke. God bless Cam. God bless every single last one of you. Please log on to MikeRileyNow.com and join us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. And quoted from a great scholar, from Tom Hartman, Barack Obama, and everybody else: democracy is not a spectator sport. We're all in this together. We got to stick together in order to make it work, y'all. All right. It's the Mike Riley Now podcast. I will see you all next week. If you have anything good to say or bad, I don't care. Shoot it to MikeRileyNow@gmail.com. All right, I'm going to shut up now. Cheers.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.